The world's come to expect great things from UC Davis. The bold, the daring, the big ideas that do more than address today. They solve for tomorrow. As we look forward, we look to you. We're asking you to think bigger than what's possible of an individual, to make a greater difference with us. Expect greater from UC Davis for the world.
Hello everyone, I'm Chancellor Gary May. I'm so glad you could join us for this Plugged In event series. Today we are discussing exciting new research happening on campus at an indoor vertical farming facility. This facility, located inside a recycled shipping container, uses cutting-edge technology like climate sensors and LED light strips to grow plants vertically without any soil. It's home to a research program to develop sustainable food solutions and train the next generation of farmers. Today you'll hear more about the incredible work being done here by UC Davis scientists and students. This is a great example of how we're leading the way in addressing some of the biggest challenges of our time, climate change and food insecurity. With a growing global population, producing clean, safe, and sustainable food has never been more important. UC Davis's long history of excellence in agriculture make us uniquely poised to address these challenges. This year, we were ranked #1 in the country and #2 in the world for agricultural sciences and forestry by QS World University Rankings. We were also ranked #1 in the world in plant and animal sciences by U.S. News and World Report. The College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences is a global leader in the field, with 2,300 acres devoted to research and teaching and 305 active U.S. patents. Our research contributes to the livelihood of everyone, from farmers to city dwellers in California and worldwide. However, climate change is a challenge that affects us all, and we want your partnership to help us find solutions. I hope you enjoy hearing from our panelists today who are helping develop the future of farming right here on campus. Now, I invite you to enjoy today's discussion.
Hi everyone, my name's Gail Taylor. I'm Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Plant Sciences here at UC Davis. Welcome, it's a pleasure to be interacting with you all today. I lead the department addressing sustainability, food insecurity, climate change and much more. Today, my colleagues and I are here to discuss two of our favorite subjects, vertical indoor farming and watercress. We hope we'll inspire you. You heard from Chancellor May just how important this research is. And we hope at least you'll go away with an interest in watercress, which will motivate you to maybe grow some and eat some. This crop is a fantastic crop. It's the most nutrient-dense leaf on the planet, and it's very, very understudied, and our research program is addressing that. We're leading research in genomics, genetics, breeding, and sustainability. Today's presenters include myself, my colleague Shamim Hamed from the Department of Bioag Engineering, and two PhD graduate students from my group, Lauren Hibbert and Yufei Qian. After everyone has presented, we hope very much to interact through a Q&A session, and let's get started. Okay, so as I said, my name's Gail Taylor, and we're interested in vertical watercress and some of the health benefits we can gain from growing leafy greens indoors. As the Chancellor mentioned, in the College of Ag and Environmental Sciences, the campus remains world leading. And in my own particular department, Plant Sciences, we still remain #1 in a very competitive world league table. So we'd like to think that we're doing really important research that matters for a sustainable future. Who are we in the department? Just a little bit of background. We're 68 full-time professors. We have about 850 people in the department, including our students. 145 of them are PhD or master students. We have a huge range of facilities, including 1,600 acres of farmland, 90,000 square feet of greenhouse glass and workspace. We attract a lot of research funding, $30 to $50 million on average each year, and that comes from a variety of sources within the state, from the federal government, from charities and elsewhere. Within the department, we're running 5 undergraduate majors in biotechnology, plant sciences, environmental horticulture and urban forestry, international ag development, and ecological management and restoration. And this is the way the department looks. So we have our core disciplines in green, they're physiology, genetics, and ecology. And then the group has these different experts within the department. So for example, environmental horticulture and urban landscapes. We work on horticultural crops such as the ones you'll hear about today. We're working on data through informatics, crop production systems, including blending agriculture with ecology and agroecology. We breed plants, we release varieties for wide public consumption. We work on crop quality, safety, and ecological management and restoration. So we have a very wide remit across the department. And we've been very busy in the last 5 years. We've appointed 12 new professors. Their details are here. Next, please. And next, please. And hopefully you'll be able to look at their expertise at your leisure through the recording. But just to say that it means that the future of the department is in good shape. These 12 new professors have an amazing array of exciting research which will be brought to bear on these really global issues of concern to all of us, that of climate change, food insecurity, population growth. We're in good shape for the future. We hope very much that you'll join us on that journey. Now, the main topic of today is indoor farming and watercress. And you may be asking yourself, well, why indoor farming? You heard some of the reasons why, and why watercress. Indoor farming is an amazingly exciting adventure that we're all on, in that it's bringing together several disciplines from across the campus where we have really good expertise: horticulture, already mentioned, engineering, computational sciences and artificial intelligence, and technology. And together there is a view that farming of the future can be done in a different way, and that we'll be able to deliver more from less to address some of these big issues of food sustainability. Some of the drivers you're going to hear about later in more detail, but they include water. Droughts are becoming more frequent, and agriculture uses around 70% of global surface water, and there are big gains to be made using indoor growing systems. Climate change, agriculture emits approximately 30% of greenhouse gases that are responsible for climate change. We're doing all sorts of research to address that, and indoor ag is part of that emerging picture. Clean, safe food is incredibly important for all of us, and indoor systems offer potential to reduce pesticides and to deliver very safe food for the population. And then finally, something we're all aware of: geopolitics and food security. Food security is increasingly seen as a national issue. Populations are becoming more urbanized, and we need to be growing food locally. And indoor systems offer many attractions to these challenges. So how can these systems help? Well, they use less water, they use less land, they use fewer chemicals, and you'll hear more details of this. But of course, in any new technology, we need to do the learning by doing, and it's not all good news. These systems can be costly, they can have a very high energy footprint and a greenhouse gas footprint. And we'll hear about that more later on. Which food crops can we grow in these systems? Well, leafy greens and culinary herbs were the first to be tackled. But I should also tell you now that in commercial production, There are also exciting developments for tomatoes, for example, strawberries, other horticultural crops, including peppers and cucumbers, and the most valuable plant in the world is now being successfully grown in indoor ag, and that is saffron. So these systems are diversifying to grow many different plant types. Of course, our favourite crop is watercress. Why watercress? Well, watercress is the most nutrient-dense leafy green on the planet. It's the powerhouse fruit and vegetable. And Lauren will go into more details on this. But essentially, the thing I'd like you to remember is don't eat kale, eat watercress, because it really is much better for you. On a range of measures, it's the leaf to eat. And I'd like to also pose the idea that in the US, we like to think of ourselves as the nation of the fast food delivery, but actually watercress was the first fast food. 150 years ago in the UK, when steam trains came to England, farmers very, very quickly realized that they could take watercress and grow it in rural areas of the country, put it onto steam trains bound for London, where it was sold from baskets, as you can see there in the bit of artwork, with a hunk of bread on the streets of London, as I say, as the very first fast food. So in many areas of the world, it has a long cultural heritage, but it's an orphan crop. It has no breeding and selection, no active crossing, no molecular biology, no genome sequence. And the research at Davis is really groundbreaking in that we are addressing these limitations and hopefully turning watercress into more of a mainstream crop. So that's the past. Does it have a future? Well, of course, that's where vertical farming comes in. Watercress is a hydroponic crop in that it likes growing in aquatic systems in water, as the name suggests. And some of these vertical systems use hydroponics intensively. And so watercress is very well suited to indoor growth. And so we would suggest that it has a future. And watercress on the east coast of the USA is being sold commercially as a packed microgreen and salad from these vertical indoor systems. It's a member of the cabbage family, or the Brassicaceae, as we call it in botany. And all of these cabbage family plants and foods that you see here, including kale, also cauliflowers, Brussels sprouts, and cabbages and broccoli, they are all in possession of some special chemistry that means their consumption is linked to reduced risks of a whole range of disease threats for humans, so cancer, cardiovascular, diabetes, asthma. And the good thing about this is published peer-reviewed research. So we know this to be absolutely evidence-based and correct. And so watercress, Nasturtium officinale, it's a perennial dicot, member of the Brassicaceae or cabbage family. It's aquatic or semi-aquatic. And you can see there in the picture a traditional watercress farm, which is a bed of a stream which has been diverted from a chalk stream, and where watercress is being grown as an aquatic crop. And as I say, we'd like to think that watercress is the new kale. And I'm not going to go over these in detail, but as I say, in the peer-reviewed referenced literature, it's been demonstrated that consumption of watercress is linked to reduction in a number of diseases. And just one final slide. It came up in the questions that people want to know, well, how does this work? Well, actually, the mechanisms of action of consumption of watercress are many and multifold. But this is one chemopreventative pathway that we have studied in slightly more detail. And in breast cancer, tumor angiogenesis is very dependent for metastatic tumor development on blood flow or angiogenesis to the new tumors. And we know that the special chemistry of watercress, a special chemistry called phenethyl isothiocyanate, is very effective at preventing one of the transcription factors that switches on gene expression that enables this angiogenesis or blood flow to metastatic tumor cells. And so we know this induction of angiogenesis is actually inhibited when in vitro human breast cell lines are exposed to watercress juice. And this has been complemented by intervention studies with cancer patients. So it's one bit of evidence that watercress can be effective in chemo prevention. I'd like to finish there and introduce the next speaker. I'm handing over to Lauren Hibbert, who is a graduate student in the lab.
Great, thank you, Gail. So yes, I'm Lauren, and today I'll be talking to you about some of our recently published work where Yufei and I investigated the yield and health benefits of watercress when we grew it in a vertical farm compared to some traditional cultivation methods. So I'll start with a short introduction on myself. So my PhD is unique in that I'm registered at the University of Southampton in the UK, and my PhD sponsors, Watercress Salads, are also based in the UK. So I spend about half of my year back there carrying out experiments on those traditional watercress farms. You can see me there in the bottom left in my high-vis doing a fertilizer trial that I carried out during COVID. But I get the best of both worlds and have the amazing opportunity to spend the other half of my time at UC Davis with access to the world-leading agricultural facilities here. So that includes the greenhouses in the top left, where you can see me working on collecting watercress seeds, and the very pink version of myself in the vertical farm. UC Davis is fantastic at drawing links with industry too, and I've loved the chance to present my research in several different places, like at Seed Central events, as well as representing the university at ASTA's Vegetable and Flower Seed Conference a couple of years ago in Monterey. I'm due to finish my PhD next spring, and I hope to move into a role in industry, so these outreach opportunities have been really valuable. So first, what is watercress? So Gail's touched on some of the things I'm going to talk about, but it's a leafy green salad in the brassica family, together with other important health crops like broccoli and kale. It grows naturally in this pristine, nutrient-rich water in the wild, and commercial cultivation has kind of capitalized on that and uses an outdoor hydroponic setup like you can see there on the right, where the watercress is like in this gravel-lined bed being fed by that nutrient-rich spring water. And that's what makes watercress so well suited for vertical farming, the fact that it grows naturally hydroponically. The industry focuses on breeding for high yield, short life cycle, nutrient density, flavor, and uniform quality. And if you think you haven't seen watercress in the world before, because it's mainly this big crop in Europe and Asia, then you might be wrong. So here's a picture of me mildly freaking out when I found it growing wild in a stream in California up near Auburn. And although watercress is not native to the US, it's perhaps not that surprising to see that it can grow in Californian streams, since watercress originated from the Mediterranean basin. And Gail touched on this as well. So watercress was one of the first fast foods, or the first fast food. In the 1900s, there was this railway line dedicated to transporting bunches of freshly harvested watercress to the London markets. And then those bunches of watercress were said just to have been eaten either straight as a bunch, or if you were lucky enough to be able to afford a loaf of bread, between two slices of bread. And that became one of the first foods on the go. But why eat watercress? So it's ranked as the most nutrient-dense fruit or vegetable by the CDC, based on the content of 17 different nutrients associated with reducing disease risk. So in particular, watercress contains high levels of vitamin C, calcium, iron, and folate. And per gram, it actually translates to more vitamin C than oranges and more iron than spinach. It's also very high in antioxidants and anti-cancer compounds called glucosinolates. So glucosinolates, not only do they give watercress its distinctive peppery taste, but they also have proven antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties. So that molecule on the left there, that's gluconasturtium, which is the most abundant glucosinolate in watercress. And then when you eat watercress, the glucosinolates, like gluconasturtium, break down into compounds that help prevent cancer in several different ways, partly by inhibiting cell growth and blood vessel formation in tumors, by reducing the activity of carcinogens and by promoting cell death in cancer cells. So that's something that's been proven in several studies, both in vivo and in vitro, and in multiple cancers, including blood, breast, colon, lung, ovary, and prostate cancer. And then just to note that it's not just watercress that has glucosinolates. They're found across the brassica family, in kale, broccoli, and cabbage, for example. And some of you might already be familiar with Benefort broccoli, which is a variety developed through traditional plant breeding methods that contains 2 to 3 times more of the main glucosinolate that you find in broccoli than you would find in normal broccoli. So hopefully now you can see why we're so interested in watercress, and with its natural hydroponic growing habits, it was an easy choice for our vertical farming study. So I'll spend the rest of my talk speaking about our recently published paper. Here we grew watercress in 3 different cultivation systems. I carried out a trial in the UK using that traditional outdoor bed, and Yufei trialed watercress within both a soil-based system here in California and within our own vertical farm facility at UC Davis. There's also evidence in other crops that plant growth and nutrition is altered by varying the levels of blue light. So we supplied half the plants with a 20% blue light treatment, and then the other half of the plants were exposed to a higher level of blue light at 30%. And we compared several different traits associated with plant yield as well as with their nutrition. So we found that within the vertical farm, plants had higher yield. So that's the top left graph of fresh weight, as well as having larger leaves, which is the bottom left graph. In all these graphs, I've highlighted the results for the vertical farm with those yellow boxes there. You should also note that in the top left graph, you can see there was a higher fresh weight in those watercress plants grown in that California soil-based system, but they were very heat stressed, so they grew very hard and fibrous, and they wouldn't be suitable to market as a salad crop, whereas the matching kind of yield in the vertical farm, those were much softer and more palatable, so they would be. When looking at the content of those anti-cancer glucosinolates, the heat-stressed environment in California increased their content. So that's perhaps not that unsurprising, considering that glucosinolates are associated with improved tolerance to drought stress in other species. You can also see with the right 2-hand bars that there was a significant increase in glucosinolate content within the vertical farm compared to the 2 other growth systems. And of special interest in those 2 bars is that green band in the bar chart. So we found a type of glucosinolate that we hadn't previously seen in watercress, and that's PB glucosinolate there. And we also saw an increase in the total concentration of glucosinolates when the plants were given more blue light. So that's the bar furthest to the right. So to summarize, growing watercress in the indoor vertical farm improved yield and anti-cancer properties, ideal for consumer preferences. Plants had a higher fresh weight and leaf size. They contained a new glucosinolate previously unidentified in watercress, and blue light was able to increase the total concentration of glucosinolates even higher. We should consider what comes next for watercress in indoor farming. Yufei, who's speaking quite shortly, will touch on her work looking at optimizing the light and nutrient regime to enhance several traits like yield, nutritional quality, and flavor even further in watercress. We can draw from work in other crops to push this further and target other traits like color, sweetness, and the content of specific dietary nutrients. I have some examples here of studies in other species. So the top right paper altered potassium content and increased glucosinolate content in kale when it was grown in a vertical farm. And the bottom right paper targeted a range of different crops using different levels of red and blue light to change traits like pigment content and antioxidant capacity. So thank you to Gail, thank you to Yufei for conducting the soil-based and vertical farm trial in this study together with Susie, and thank you to Dan Klebenstein's lab with Ella for conducting the glucosinolate analysis. If anyone is interested in reading the full paper, scanning that QR code there should link you to it. Thank you for listening.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So this is Shami Mohammed. I'm working as an assistant professor in the Department of Biological and Agriculture and Engineering. And I'm also working, I'm running the controlled environment engineering lab. And my lab is mostly focused from engineering aspect, especially like energy efficiency for controlled environment ag, including the indoor vertical farming. And I would like to just talk a little bit about the background. I think already you know like why the controlled environment ag or the indoor vertical farming is increasing. So you can see like the per capita arable land is kind of decreasing, and also we're expecting almost above 9 billion people by 2015. So we need to increase the food, and also our traditional agriculture is having trilemma problem. That means like we need increased food, we have the limited resources like the land, and also our traditional agricultural practice cause significant environmental impact. So now the next figure is kind of showing the distribution of the overall controlled environment agriculture in different part of the world. And we can see the North America is also one of the significant contribution in terms of the distribution. And if we just talk about the total market value of the indoor farming industry, and we can see right now it's about $2.4 or $5 billion industry, and we are expecting almost $12 billion by 2016. And the expansion rate in North America is quite significantly higher compared to the other part of the world. And this figure is kind of showing the different form of the indoor farming. You can see kind of very fancy, smaller scale, the kitchen suitable, the indoor farming facilities, little bit something like bigger scale. You can put in your office or some in living room. But if we just talk about the mostly from commercial aspect, basically 3 different types of the indoor farming, we can see like the shipping container, or you already show some experimental data from this kind of facilities. It could be a glass house with multiple storage, and also could be kind of big warehouse type facilities or multi-storage building. So this is one of the conceptual design from indoor farming facilities for multi-storage. Like 32 storage, and they just try to analyze like what could be the possible crops that could be grown at the different level of the building. Like it's include from the tomatoes, strawberries, spinach, and others leafy green. And we know, like some of our panelists already mentioned the advantage of the indoor vertical farming. So I would like to also repeat a couple of the things. We know like it's kind of the reliable harvest because we are not impacted by the outdoor climate, and also the minimum overhead cost, like the water use also minimum, the increased growing area. That means like we can increase that things per square foot of the area with multiple level. Definitely the crop yields is quite significantly high, and we can get the better quality crops with more automated control system. So one of the kind of the business value proposition, or the business terminology, we always like to say the indoor vertical farming is 90% more efficient in water use, 50 to 620 times higher yield per unit area, and also it's generate almost 80% less waste compared to the traditional field production. And now I will also talk about a little bit the different challenges of the indoor vertical farming, especially from the energy aspect. And this is also one of the survey like we just collected from very recently completed, and you can see the overall trend of the CA industry, including the indoor vertical farming in the USA. And we can see still most of this industry is dominating by the leafy green, tomato, mostly like, and also some flowers and microgreens and herbs. So the interesting things you can see, like if we see the profitability, still the indoor vertical farming is kind of facing the big challenge to see this industry as a profitable. And if we just talk about in terms of the crops, we can see that the leafy green and the microgreen is quite okay compared to the herbs and like the other crops, like, and flower is definitely the most profitable. So the types of the crops that we are selecting, that also one of the biggest things to see this industry as a kind of profitable industry. So this slide is basically showing the operational cost distribution for 2 different types of the Controlled Environment Act. Like the left one is the greenhouse. This is from my previous study. We just try to simulate the different cost component for greenhouse in cold region, and you can see the labor and the heating, cooling, and the CO2 or the dehumidification is the biggest cost component. So this number could be slightly different depending on the location, especially in California. Definitely instead of heating, the cooling will be the most significant cost component along with the heating and others energy related cost. The right side one is basically showing the cost distribution for the indoor vertical farming or the plant factories. We can see the electricity is the biggest cost component. The labor definitely is the second largest operational cost. And now if we just talk about the distribution of this energy cost from the different perspective, then we can see the lighting is almost contributing 70% of the cost from electricity purpose, and almost 30% is used for indoor air management, like the control the temperature, humidity, and the air circulation. So this slide is basically showing the energy demand for the different form of the control environment ag, including the plant factory or indoor farming, fully closed greenhouse, and the open greenhouse at different location worldwide. And we can see the energy cost for indoor farming is almost double compared to the fully closed greenhouse or kind of the traditional open concept greenhouse. The right side one kind of showing the different studies. They try to compare the energy cost per kg of the lettuce production in different part of the world for the indoor vertical farming. And we can see on an average from the different study, the per kg of the lettuce production almost required more than 15 kilowatt hour of the electricity. Now, just as we mentioned, one of the biggest challenges for the indoor vertical farming is the energy use, and that kind of caused the biggest concern in terms of the carbon footprint. Because we know our traditional agriculture, the biggest concern is the greenhouse gas emission. Now, in that aspect, like if we just talk about the indoor vertical farming or any control environment ag, so then we need the energy used to maintain the control environment. So in that aspect, this slide is kind of showing the carbon footprint of the open field greenhouse and indoor vertical farming. And we can see compared to the open field, the greenhouse performs slightly better in some cases, but the indoor vertical farming, the carbon footprint per kg of lettuce production quite significantly higher, like almost 10 to 15 times higher in some cases. But again, it's this study are from the different source. The life cycle analysis is depend on the data source and the approach used for the life cycle analysis. And the most important thing is the energy source that I will show you in the next slide. So this is another one of the study in Japan. They just try to compare the open field, the plant factory with supplemental lighting, that means the greenhouse, and the plant factory with artificial lighting. So we can see the comparison of the different benefit of the indoor vertical farming or the greenhouse. We can definitely see the land use is significantly low, water consumption low, and also others fertilizer use also low. But the carbon emission or the greenhouse emission is high. But again, like this dark color is showing that if we use the most advanced technology, like to reduce the energy cost and the renewable energy based source, we can significantly reduce this carbon footprint. The same things for the plant factory. We can see like we can significantly reduce the carbon footprint, but still it's like we cannot definitely go up to that level for the greenhouse. That means we need significant works to reduce the energy demand or improve the efficiency for the different resource use and indoor vertical farming. So this is kind of showing the different way we can reduce the carbon footprint. So we can definitely integrate the renewable energy. That is the biggest things we can play, and you can see the different energy source and the carbon footprint emission for the indoor vertical farming. So compared to the coal or the gas and the other form of the energy, we can see the renewable energy like wind or hydro or the nuclear power can significantly reduce the carbon footprint. So that's the biggest things. And also we can do other things, the energy optimization, energy recovery, the growing substrate with more renewable materials, circular economy like composting, rainwater harvesting for hydroponic system, recirculating the system, and also they use the potential of the gray water for repurpose the water use. And definitely the plant breeding and phenotypings to develop more tolerant cultivars for indoor growings. And this is kind of showing the different combination or the different relationship of the different topics indoor farming. So you can see the most important things is like the energy efficiency, LED lighting, improved efficiency, plant physiology, and others different topics. So in my lab, we just try to focus on the net zero target for the indoor vertical farming. So we try to focus on the energy efficiency, on-site renewable energy integration, and also integrate the different circular economic concepts to reduce the impact and increase the profitability of this promising industry. And that's everything. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event and listening to us talking about Watercress and the indoor vertical farm. I am going to speak about some teaching and training activities that we're having in this indoor vertical farm facility. My name is Leafy, and I am a graduate student in the Horticulture and Agronomy graduate group at UC Davis. Here is a picture showing that all of my undergraduate student interns from last quarter who were working in this indoor vertical farm facility. Here is something about me. I am an international student at UC Davis, and I'm from Beijing, China. I did my undergrad at UC Davis in the major of environmental horticulture and urban forestry. Then I did my master in horticulture and agronomy graduate group, and I graduated last year. Then I continued with Professor Gail Taylor to do my PhD. In my spare time, I enjoy hiking, and you can see that's a gorgeous coastal line picture that I took near San Francisco. And also I like taking care of my houseplants. Here is a brief overview of all the teaching activities and undergraduate student interns that we have been hosting in this facility. We hosted 11 student interns from the College of Ag. They came in from different majors. I made a Mentimeter graph that's on the right. You can see that most students came in from a plant science major or biotechnology, as well as IAD, which is the International Agriculture Design, also greenhouse production. So students came in from various majors and also different years, from freshman to senior. We also had a chance to host some transfer students. There is about 50-50% of domestic and international students. This is a very inclusive working environment, and then we welcome everyone who has interest, and we welcome everyone to come work with us. Some of the positive comments that I received from my interns that I am showing on the top of the screen, students think that this is a valuable educational experience that they can only receive from UC Davis. Lots of the questions that I got is about how this indoor vertical farm facility work. You probably have heard from the chancellor, from Professor Taylor, about some brief overview of the facility. And this is a closer up look of inside of the facility. And those, I took this picture when during a student tour, and I took a picture of a student who was taking a picture. It has built-in LED lights. It has no natural light sources. All the supplemental lights came from LED light. There were a red and blue LED light. When they both turned on, it showed this iridescent pinkish purple color inside. This whole facility does not use any soil. It's fully hydroponic. On the lower left corner, you could see some emitters dripping down water, and that water contains nutrients. This whole facility, this whole main growth area uses a main tank, which has 110 gallons of water. It gets recycled and reused all the time to supply all the irrigation. Therefore, it has a really good saving on water usage. Also, another cool feature that I am showing on the lower right corner, the remote control app. This is a great way for next generation farmers, that anyone who wants to use remote control to just look at the environmental parameters such as temperature, pH, electrical conductivity, EC, as well as to remotely control the on and off of the LED light panels. Also that in this facility, since it's such an enclosed environment, it doesn't have much problem with pests. Therefore, little to no, no pesticide is needed to apply to crops growing. Classes. In collaboration with the Department of Plant Sciences, we have hosted 4 classes in this teaching facility. There were PLS2, the botany and physiology of cultivated plants. There will be the Plants and Society SAS12 in the coming fall quarter, as well as last winter quarter, there were ENH 125 class. Students run a quarter-long red romaine lettuce growing project in this facility. Also, the PLS 222, which is the upper division graduate level class about advanced plant breeding, that student toured the facility as well. Here are some pictures about student activities and involvements. In the picture, you're seeing Professor Peter Fair-Smith and Professor Gail Taylor giving class instruction lectures to PLS2 students about controlled environment agriculture and indoor farming. We introduced students to some general concepts, and then we gave them class tour, give them a tour as a group into the facility. Students usually have lots of questions after the tour, and then we also offer Q&A session, as well as student-led project in the facility. Here, I am showing some pictures that we were having for the student project for ENH 125. On the top left, that was me giving a hands-on demo to students who are interested in doing this project. And that's about how to transplant red romaine lettuce onto a growth panel. The top right picture is showing students are having some questions about how the LED light panels work. And then we tend to give on-site Q&A and tend to make this operation very interactive and also giving students hands-on learning opportunities in this facility. Here are some nice pictures that students were growing in the ENH 125 class on lettuce. This is a very good opportunity for student-led learning because students form study groups and then they discuss and came out with a experimental plan. Then they transplant the lettuce seedlings themselves. Afterwards, they come back every week to do their morphological measurements. At the end of the school year, they provided a final report as their class assignment. It is nearly the end of my presentation, and then here is the slide that I want to show about. This is also a great training opportunity for a graduate student. I am running a wild accession watercress screening project using this indoor grown settings. The world map that you're seeing on the top left, it is showing the red dots are showing all the area of collection of the unique watercress wild types. Our lab has 32 unique wild type collection that has been collected globally, included but not limited to Asia, North America, South America, and Europe. I grow the plants and then give them 2 light treatments. My aim is to looking for the best, the most adaptable wild type watercress to grow using a controlled environmental setting. Measurements are generally categorized into either nutrition or morphological. I am doing, including but not limited to the measurements on the list, glucosinolate quantification, the important nutrition that Lauren just mentioned, and leaf color reflectance, about antioxidant capacity, sugar, vitamins, as well as morphology like fresh and dry weight, branch, and leaf. So thank you very much for your participation today. And then thank you. This is a picture I took for my interns from last quarter. Thank you for all the past donors and potential future donors for your help of making the research and training opportunities possible in this facility. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of my colleagues. So over to question and answers. Before the event, we received lots of questions in the chat box, and I'd like to summarize a few of them. A question that kept coming up was, can I do this at home? Can I be a vertical farmer at home? And the answer is yes. It can be a little technically challenging, but there are some commercial setups which someone's already done all of the hard work. And one of them that's very good is something called aero gardens. Others exist, of course. I happen to know that several of us have purchased these small aero gardens with the lights and the nutrients. And you can be really successful, and Watercress does really well in these home systems. Associated with that, people want to know, well, can you buy the lights or this or that? You can, but it can be quite technically challenging if you buy the components and build your own setup. We do that, but things often go wrong, like the humidity is wrong, or the temperature, or the nutrient conductivity, or the pH. So with these systems like Aero Gardens, they are already, all the hard work's been done for you. Where can we get Watercress? Well, we would be happy if you contact us to supply a small packet of seed of Watercress, which is from our collection. If anyone's interested in getting started, we'd be very happy to do that. Which crops can we grow in indoor systems? As I said, and Shamim said, it began with the leafy greens, and now we're seeing these more complex crops, if you like, with fruits and berries and strawberries and tomatoes and peppers, and now becoming commercial. So things are happening in that area. I wanted to hand over to one of the questions now that came up while we were live. So Shamim, maybe you answered it. It was about the life cycle analysis. What does the life cycle analysis look like in these systems?
Okay, so the life cycle analysis could be different depending on the approach or the method the people are using, but most agricultural case we try to consider, we call the cradle to gate approach, or cradle to grave approach. That's basically indicate. So if you just consider indoor farming system, whatever the construction materials that you're using for building that facilities, will consider all of these components, and also the different materials you're using for growing plants. It could be the growing materials, energy that's used, what is the source of that energy, the plants itself, and also the ultimate products. It's basically we try to estimate like how much the carbon footprint basically emit per kg of the production. We call it the functional unit. So that means if we produce 1 kg of lettuce, what will be the total contribution in terms of the CO2 emission? That is one of the impacts. There have also others impact like the water eutrophication, the other ecological impact, but mostly the most critical one is how much CO2 is basically emit per kg of the crop production.
Thanks, Shamim. There's a question here that maybe you, Faye, can take a shot at. It's about red and blue LEDs for sustaining plant growth. What do we know about red and blue, and is just red and blue sufficient for watercress growth?
So, well, great question. Red and blue, so the plants, they have a region that's called the photosynthetically active radiation zone. And then for red and blue light, they overlap with the most suitable wavelength that plant can make best use of. Blue light usually help with some nutritional benefits, as well as red lights help with morphologically like plant growth.
Great answer, Yufei. And then another one for you, Yufei. There's a question, what's the medium or media in those vertical panels? So your panels in the farm, maybe you could say how they fit together. What do they consist of?
Yes, great question. For a growth panel, so let me give a brief overview. For all the growth wall, it's vertically hanging growth wall with growth panels on it. And on each panel, I have 5 separate growth channels. And that's where I transplant into. Every growth channel, I have 2 pieces of black styrofoam looking thing that's provide all the anchorage and support. And then I have a layer of absorption. So it's a wicking system. I have a layer of felt that is inside in the middle of the 2 styrofoam. Then for plant itself, I didn't direct sowing onto the felt. I have them growing in a seedling station into core and peat moss plug. That's a pre-made plug. And then upon transplanting, I transplant the plug with the seedling itself into the growth panel.
Thank you, Yufei. There's a question here, maybe Lauren can answer this. It's about the nutritional quality of crops grown under LEDs relative to those grown outdoors. What do we know about that?
It's pretty growing. I mean, there's a lot of research on the LEDs, not necessarily within vertical farming, but just hydroponics and LEDs. So I think some of the papers that I covered looked at increasing glucosinolates in kale. And that's one example of something that we can do. And obviously we saw the same with watercress. But there's a lot of scope for looking at we haven't even begun to explore things like all the vitamins and minerals that we might increase in watercress. And that's something that Yufei will look at with her work.
Thank you, Lauren. And then one final question. There were a few questions around, well, can you grow anything in these systems? Can you grow grain crops like wheat? The answer is, in theory, we can grow anything indoors. The issue is that with some other crops, like grain crops, architecturally, they have been bred for outdoor systems. We would need to do a lot more work on getting the architecture right and to grow those crops effectively in these systems. So watch this space, lots of research to be done in the future. Now, I'd like to thank you for all of your thoughtful questions. We have lots of questions that we haven't yet answered, but I think you can see a poll that's just popped up into your screen. We would be very much appreciative if you could take a minute or two to answer the poll. That would be wonderful. And we'll hope to get back to people with answers to some of those questions. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and to our experts and to listening to our experts. We hope that you leave this event feeling inspired, as we do, to continue this research. And we'd like to think that it's the type of research that sets UC Davis apart. We're joining science and agriculture. And please, if you haven't tried watercress yet, go out and buy some. It is available in the supermarkets in California. Look very hard. Pete's, for example, has some watercress grown on compost plugs. If you're interested in supporting the Department of Plant Sciences, please contact Oliver Ramsey, Executive Director of Development at the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. And please keep up with Taylor Lab with the watercress news on Instagram, for example, at Taylor Lab Sotom. We look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Goodbye.